Hi, everybody. Right now, there's no package to open, but I got a question today that I have been asked many times, and it's a story that I've repeated many times. But this time, I thought maybe I should put this on film and, as the kids say, for the record. I was asked how all of this got started. Something that evolved from 7 boxes to 2 small buildings and this room and the stuff in the basement and stuff in the garage, etc. And it actually happened in 4 phases. None of this was planned. Back in the day, going back to the mid to late 70s, the tribe was much smaller, and the 3 men that we called daddies, brothers, and mentors, first Jack Jackson, second Tom and Jerry McNichol, gave us things to read. From Tom and Jerry, we were more likely to get the Leatherman's Handbook, or to go in and meet for lunch to pick up the newest copy of Drummer so that we could go looking for Mr. Benson. From Jack, we would get old exotique magazines or erotiques, or the occasional scandalous newspaper, or something that might have come in from Europe like Fantasia. Even though there were old issues, there were things we could read. The many publications and books and things that are so common today weren't so common then. And all of those bits and pieces were treasures. The early contact magazines that New York was famous for. The local publications, what's now called local porn. The books and magazines and things we might have gotten at a wonderful cross-dressing boutique called Lee Brewster's. Things like that were treasures for us. They were also part of our education. A lot of it was meant to be only one-handed reading and then thrown away. But you never know when you want to go back and read it later. So I find myself putting probably half of it away into little boxes because there were things that I wanted to read later. Would that I had the knowledge now that I have way back then. The library would have gotten a whole lot bigger, a whole lot faster. But that's another story. And we saved those bits and pieces. Ultimately, Jill and I moved into our first house in Newark, a place that was called Paradise Island, and there are still stories that are told about that place. A lot of SM movies were shot there. There were a lot of tribal gatherings and parties there. A lot of dominants did their photo shoots there. And that little collection grew because they were always leaving me, or Jill, mostly me, something to read, partially to occupy my time while I was either babysitting a movie crew or as a way of saying thank you for helping out with the party or things like that. And then from that little house in Newark, we moved cross country for Jill's job to California. And 1 or 2 boxes of this stuff that I just hadn't read yet moved with us. Now, from that time in California, when I was fortunate enough to both work in the motion picture industry and serve a couple whose leather SM tribal history went back to for him, the 40s. For her, probably the late 50s to early 60s. And their book collection was incredible. I would read at night and put things on different shelves so that I could go back and read later, and wish that I could share this fabulous little library, probably 30 or 40 linear feet. But to me, that was an amazing treasure, especially compared to my 2 or 3 bookshelves of books and magazines and newspapers and things like that. I acquired a lot more while we were in California because, of course, California was a hotbed for New Age, kink, SM. Leather and lace had become a thing, and we had our own newspaper. Um, there were a lot of different men's groups that were popping up, and in those very early stages, publications of that sort were more than just behind the counter or something you had to go in and whisper and politely ask for. More and more topics, gay, a little fetishistic, but not really kinky, were showing up. And I'd buy them, read them, and put them in these little boxes. Well, Jill and I, by the mid-'80s, had to move again, and this time for corporate job. We moved to the suburb of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And carried with us were 7 boxes of things that I had either saved because I wanted to read again, books, treasures, memories, a few event programs, a few run programs, things like that. Well, the next generation of kinklings was just coming into its own in Oklahoma and looking for mentors and parents. But the plague, AIDS, hit the Midwest after it hit the East and West Coast. And by the 80s, when Jill and I got there, the elder statesmen in Oklahoma had either died or, for the most part, taken their toys and gone home. There were very few out leathermen that you saw for all occasions rather than just the occasional club run or things like big contests or events that were held in the bars. There were only a few that the kids could find. And between Tulsa and Oklahoma City, there was a brand new generation coming out. Well, because of a few events that Jill and I had gone to in Oklahoma City, this new generation realized that they had a set of parents who were a little more open to being called mom and dad. They called Jill dad behind her back. And being open to opening our homes to them, to giving them a place that was safe to come and stay and learn, ask questions, and just hang out. And that those 7 boxes of what was just my old stuff became the history that they were hungry for. This generation of Larry Higgins, Snow, Shadow, who went on to become Ms. Oklahoma, as did Snow, by the way. These kids wanted to know who they were and how they got there. And they would rummage through the boxes on the weekends, and each would pull up a little stack of something by their favorite place, because they usually camped all over the living room and occasionally even in the dining room. And I would find them reading, and they would ask questions of Jill and me about the events, the books, the people we knew, the places we had been, the events we attended. And about 50% of the time, I would say, well, half of what you're looking for is in the box. Go look. And they would. And then there would be other questions the next weekend. And the answers pretty much ended up, it's in the box. Go look. Well, the new group called TULSA, the Tulsa Uniform Leather Seekers Association, of which Jill and I were both charter members. We were at the very first meeting, the first gathering, to see if anyone was even interested in forming a leather group. My club brothers, because we were the only 2 women, also wanted that information. They were hungry for it. Because Jill and I could travel, me far more actually than my partner. So I could go to the events and bring them back souvenirs, bring back 4 or 5 programs, or 3 or 4 t-shirts, or mementos that they probably wouldn't get, because the circuit was some Arkansas, a lot of Dallas, northern Texas, of course, and maybe a few club runs 100 to 150 miles out of the area, but that was about it. Versus running up to San Francisco, remembering that I worked in Los Angeles and served in Los Angeles, to be able to attend a very new event called Folsom, or the very early drummers that were put on by Audrey Joseph, um, or being able to even get a hold of drummer magazines, because an awful lot of things could not be mailed into the state of Oklahoma. Didn't mean you couldn't have it. It just meant you couldn't mail it. And those 7 boxes began to expand because every time I had to go to work, either I was flying back with a suitcase, which was getting pretty heavy actually, or I was driving back and forth. And I love to drive, as those who know me know. I find it very relaxing. So the idea of being on the road for a day and a half or 2 days, back when cell phones didn't reach everybody, I found just to be the most tranquil. I could put on some loud music, stop wherever I wanted to, see sights that I probably wouldn't get a chance to see, and take my time going into service or take my time going back to work. But the car that I drove was a '68 Ford Galaxy convertible. And that car had a trunk that you could probably bury or hide a few bodies in, I should say. So whenever I drove back from work, it was always the newest copies of the Leather Journal, 5, 6, or 7. 5 or 6 copies of programs, T-shirts for my club brothers, whatever the new books or magazines were always in the trunk. And the library kept growing, as did the souvenirs for TULSA. And I didn't realize then, because all I wanted to do was provide information for my kinklings and for my club brothers, that what I was doing was amassing a treasure trove of information. It was just something that I did because my club brothers wanted me to, and because my kids, my leather kids, asked me to. So that is the first part of this story. I will resume it at another time, but at least you now know beginnings.